everybody ready? Yeah. I guess we don't have to wait on him. We're not broadcasting, we're just recording, right?
Yeah.
All right. Call this meeting to order. Time is 7:02 p.m. This is the Morgantown City Council Committee of the Whole meeting. We tonight are at the West Virginia Botanic Garden on Tyrone Road in Morgantown. We are here this evening. We would like to extend thanks to Director Philip Smith for giving us a tour of the facilities earlier this evening. He showed off some of the things that the City of Morgantown has helped to fund on this piece of city property out in the county. And we enjoyed a reception with a lot of our local biking community at the new facility this evening. So thank you so much for having us tonight. We have a number of presentations on our agenda to begin. First up is West Virginia Botanic Garden, Philip Smith, Executive Director.
Thank you, Council, for coming out. This is a big honor for us to have a City Council meeting here at the Garden. I think this might be the first one.
I'm sure it's the first one.
This is the first one. So it's exciting. Someone asked why the City Council would be meeting at the Botanic Garden, and I had to remind them this is city property. And we've had a great relationship with the city, allowing the Botanic Garden, which is a nonprofit organization, to manage this property of 83 acres that the city has here. And I feel like we're doing a pretty good job. Hopefully you all agree. And so we have made a number of leasehold improvements here, and it's an honor to be able to show you some of the things that we've been able to do through a lot of grassroots fundraising and a lot of volunteerism and community vision, as well as the support that we have from the City of Morgantown. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and to welcome you here for your first ever meeting on this property just out of town. Hopefully it's inspiring. You know, and just across the way, they're meeting right now talking about the great outdoor recreation assets that Morgantown has that are very enviable across the eastern United States. We have amazing outdoor recreation opportunities here that a lot of people just don't have. And I think that as we continue to look at our growth and our economy, these are sustainable things that we need to bake into our resume here as a city. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you guys for coming out and doing the tour. You know, we've done a lot of things with some city funding, such as bringing in utilities, adding a service building, things like our new event center, the terrace at Tibbs Run, that will create a lot more sustainable revenue for the garden. And we're hoping that we can continue that partnership and in the future. One of the things that we really are going to need in the coming years, we can't rent that facility and make revenue on it during the winter time until we can get snow removal on this site. So it's really important to us to be able to get paving done here, and I think that that's probably, you know, in the future we'll have additional grant requests regarding that. And we do have a potential funding commitment from the state of West Virginia to help significantly with that. So just be on the lookout for that. And again, I just can't thank you all enough for the support that you guys have continually given to the Botanic Garden and allowing us to manage this site and make these leasehold improvements. So thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Director Smith?
Thank you so much for the tour. It was beautiful. Well, you saw my face several times. I was stunned to see the building over there. I think it's definitely necessary, and I'm really glad that we got this tour today.
Great. Yeah, the next phases, we do have a funding commitment from Equitrans Transmission to help us build a new visitor center, which will go at the top of the hill. That'll have a little cafe and a gift shop there, and then we'll begin renovations on the house that we own there to be able to house our administrative offices as we continue to grow and our staffing grows. You know, we're adding jobs to Morgantown, so that's another great thing to put a feather in our cap on. So thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
Thank you.
You all had a document of a master planning kind of document, and I'm wondering, you've really built a lot of what was on there.
Right.
One of the plans that you talked about, but I'm not sure everyone here got to hear about, was dealing with water and having exhibits related to water and filtering through some sort of marshland, or I don't know
Yeah.
how you describe a wet area scientifically, but down into the lower part. If you could just describe
Sure,
that
I can
as something that.
try to give a brief summary. As part of our master plan, we have a few areas that we still need to lean into and get funded and figure out how to make it happen. One of that is the core. This is, for those of you who don't know, this is the former reservoir for the city of Morgantown. From the late 1800s, they were bringing water in. Our MUB representatives here probably know that history a lot better than I do. We actually have had some historians who put together a lot of information. So our site really is a story about water, and the clean water that comes from Tibbs Run helped to grow Morgantown for a long time. It was drained. The lake was drained in 1980, but it continues to be a little bit of a story about water, and we try to interpret that. One of the things we'd like to do eventually is submit Jones Run, which comes in at the top of the property here, back into the basin area, so that it can be a more natural stream, because right now it's filtered into the old canal that was built to divert Jones Run around this site. And so eventually we want to be able to resubmit that in, so that during flood events and stuff it's more of a natural system. And as a part of that, we would probably put as a part of the master plan, we did have a hydrology study done that said that this is all doable, is to put another smaller pond reservoir at the top with an irrigation gate so that we can feed rivulets that kind of go through the basin, and we can have boardwalks and things like that, and different types of habitats and wetlands and marshes and things. So that's one component there. Another component of the master plan that we're looking into is developing more gardens. We are a botanic garden. A botanic garden is a museum of plants, and we want to add a lot more of those plantings that people expect when you visit a botanic garden. So a lot of these areas over here we're going to be developing into more gardens that create more of that tourism asset. And also from a pseudoscience standpoint, to be able to have plant collections. Like a museum would have artifacts, we will have collections of plants. Which we already accession all of our plants that come in. We database everything. So we're trying to be as scientific about it as we can. And then, those are two main areas that we're looking at. It's those habitat gardens and then our core gardens.
And then you told us how many visitors you have a year at your visitor counting station at the most?
So we just added
Those
these
numbers?
infrared counters that the MRTC uses the same counting system. It's a traffic's infrared counting system. It doesn't necessarily measure the number of visitors. It measures traffic that goes past that particular spot. But it gives us a better feel for what areas of the garden are being used more than others, as well as sort of maybe a guess at how much our visitation is. The one spot over here on the garden that we call the Long Walk, which is on the old dam, we between May and September had 106,000 hits. So at least 106,000 pass-bys. So that's a pretty good number. As we build the new visitor center and build in that infrastructure, we feel like that's going to help us to get a better handle also on our visitation as we have people to check in, and we start trying to figure out how to manage visiting through trying to filter people through that visitor center.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Our second presentation is a vacant structures update with Ricky Yeager, our Director of Development Services.
Yeah, good evening, Council. Thank you for having me here tonight to talk about some of the proposed changes to the Vacant Structure Code, Article 1718. Obviously, while there's a legitimate public purpose for knowing where vacant structures are located and their condition, there's also been a lot of discussion since the ordinance was adopted in 2017 to make changes to it. And so the revisions that are in your packet are a kind of culmination of those discussions over the past couple of years. And I'd like to thank Ryan Simonton, our city attorney, for kind of sitting with us through all of those discussions, capturing our thoughts, and putting it into the piece of legislation that's before you. Just by way of background, the ordinance for the vacant structure code was adopted in October of 2017. The first required registration of vacant structures occurred in 2018, and there are currently 58 vacant structures registered with the city today, which equates to $266,000 in registration fees, which unfortunately much of which will not be realized, hence one of the reasons why we're coming with proposed changes to the program. The impetus for the proposed changes before you is to clarify the intent and findings of the ordinance, to clarify the inspection process and registration fees associated therewith, and to adjust the fee structure to differentiate between vacant structures that are in compliance with applicable building and safety codes and those that do not present a hazard to entrance or the surrounding area, and those that do. What is not changing with the proposed ordinance is requirements to register property on an annual basis, and the ability for property owners to file an appeal or an exemption request. And what Ryan has done is really clarified what those definitions are. So for instance, an appeal is filed for the purpose of claiming a structure is not a vacant building and defined by the code. An exemption is filed for a structure when a property owner agrees there is a vacant building, but would like to avoid registering it because the structure cannot be occupied for some limited period of time due to some circumstances. So if you have any other additional questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ricky? I think this is something we've been asking for a long time and talking about almost as long, so, yeah. All right. Brings us to our third presentation, moving right along. The historic Morgantown Post Office, Dr. Jane Carty, President.
Good evening again. Here I am again. Thank you very much for allowing us to come before you again to update you about the historic Morgantown Post Office building project. I am Jane Carty. I'm the president of the board. And with me tonight is Patty Ryan over there. She is the director of the YCF as well as a member of the board, the HPO. We call it HPO. You know that. She's a member of the HPO board. In fact, she's the treasurer. If, with your permission, I'd like to first give you some updates about HPO and also MAC. Michael Carty could not be here this evening, so I guess I'm speaking for him as well. And then Patty will present to you a project or a proposal for your consideration. Is that all right?
All right.
All right. All right. So first, as you know, I'm sure you all know that we have completed the roof replacement. We have fixed all the drains on the top of the building. We repaired the masonry at the very top. In other words, I believe we've saved the building from further deterioration. The water leaks then have been stopped, thank goodness. But that brings me to some of the interior problems. Because of water leaks, we had quite a bit of plaster that got wet and is falling down and so forth. I wanted to update you about that. We did apply for a facade grant from the city. We have procured granting matching funds to complete that application process. And we're just waiting to hear about that, and we do hope we can get that. Once we get funding for the plaster repair, we'll paint then and clean those areas in MAC that are most used for programming. That means the main floor, the art gallery, the stairway going up, the beautiful stairway going up, and so forth. So that's the plan for that. We also think it's very important to remove the rest of the asbestos. We removed the asbestos in the roofing area. Now we're ready to complete the asbestos removal in the whole building. We have enough funds for that from our contingency funds from our loan for the roof. So MVB assures us that we will have enough funds to pay for that asbestos removal. That will happen as soon as we get a date from the company. That's Circa. So that's good news. The boiler, the heating problem in the building has still not been resolved. In January, we got an estimate of about $82,000 to replace a boiler, the existing boiler. That didn't provide any other services except for that, the heat. When all said and done, that simple boiler replacement would be about, we think, $96,500 at this point. Therefore, we decided we need to look into other possibilities for heating to see if we could find something cheaper and still enable enough heat for MAC to do their programming for the winter. So we are getting estimates from HVAC Systems and from Appalachian Heating and Plumbing, and they are looking into providing temporary heating furnaces, maybe with one AC option, for only those parts of MAC that they will be using. And that means that first floor area and maybe some of the second floor so that we can provide some spaces for artists to have studios. So we are not asking for funds for that yet because we need to know exactly what we're doing there. We don't want to ask anyone for money until we find exactly how much it will cost and exactly what the best alternative is. We have some really good news for you. You probably know this, but both Senators Capito and Manchin have supported our project by advocating for our $1 million request for earmarked federal funds. Those requests have gone to the omnibus bill, and they are in the omnibus bill. So we think we will get that $1 million down the road. Who knows when you do get federal funds? But we hope within a year we will see $1 million. We'll hope. So that's our best news. All right. As far as MAC, MAC is going forward. They have a great board. They are just full of energy, and they've been working with the city and the library on this monarch butterfly program because the monarch butterfly is endangered, as you know. So that will be in October. That's going forth quite nicely. They have also, during their past board meeting, that was on Wednesday, they approved funds for a part-time program director, very much needed, in order to really get some good programming this year. So that position will be posted next week. And if you know anybody who might like to do that, be sure to send them our way. That's about all I have for MAC, but Patty? Oh, any questions before I let Patty take it? Okay. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Jane?
I think Jane provided you with the agenda, but there's also some copies of some invoices on here that was sent to you in email late today, which I know you guys are busy and probably haven't had a chance to look at it, so I
Thank you so much.
copies as well.
I have a question. Tell us so you're talking about programming temporary heating and asbestos removal. So tell us how that might fit together or what the timetable is for how extensive the asbestos removal is.
I don't know that we have the details from that yet with the company. I know that we coordinate on our HPO board. We have 3 members from MAC and 3 members from YCF, and Jane is our volunteer president doing an amazing job. But we continue to talk about making sure that as these projects and renovations come up, we really need to work together, because it's the most important thing is that MAC can continue to function as much as possible. YCF has moved out, but the museum and MAC are still there. So anything that we do renovation-wise, we just are really making sure we coordinate that effort on, finding out how long, if it would shut the building down, or, if we need to take any precautions.
So YCF is where now then?
We are renting space from Huntington Bank. We're on High Street, on the third floor of Huntington Bank. It's a temporary location, and they've been very kind in giving us a discounted rent to stay there.
Nice.
You all didn't sustain water damage. You're still in your location in that building?
In Huntington Bank's third floor, yes. Yeah.
There's a lot of water damage
Yeah.
in the annex.
I think that was a pipe in the main street.
Oh,
Okay,
Main Street,
just
Morgantown
Main
on the
Street.
first floor.
Yeah, so
they
just
had
Main Street
a,
was
Yeah.
it was
affected
a
by
water
that, not the rest
heater
of the.
was leaking.
Okay.
Yeah.
About the asbestos, we will certainly consult with the museum and MAC before we bring in.
Oh, I'm sure.
asbestos people. So,
I just know that sometimes
Yeah.
that can't all coexist, so.
right.
Yeah. So it's not to that stage where you're actually doing removal yet.
Well, we're not doing that until after this monochrome collecting, that's for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of the plaster work and the cleanup that we need to do just to make it look a little nicer, I mean, that we'll have to coordinate with the MAC as well, because that'll obviously close it down, for I don't know how long, but we'll
Yep.
coordinate around their programs as well. Yeah. But the piece that I was going to bring to you today is actually kind of hot off the press for us. It's an estimate that we received just recently. It's attached here on the second page, but as you may remember, some of you were with us when we asked you for $12,500 to help us pay for landmarks. They're the company that provided the renderings, for the architectural renderings for our facility. We went to the county commission, and they did $12,500, and the city did $12,500. So that $25,000 allowed us to have the renderings that we have today to help keep our project moving. This is really a milestone moment for us, because we're ready to move forward with another portion of our project. And so that's what this invoice, or estimate, I guess, from Landmark is that we're sharing with you today. We just received it September 21st. It's a total of $188,400 for architectural designs, so that we can apply for historic and new market tax credits. And we want to begin, if we can do that, it would be really a launch to our capital campaign. HPO has to have these final design plans and documents from Landmarks to go forward with the tax credits and the historical tax credit, new market tax credits. Landmark, if they receive these funds, we can pay them. They can start immediately, is what we had a meeting recently, and they told us they would be able to start immediately. And they predict that the work would take about 6 months to do the plans, part 1 and part 2. Of course, they do ask for a 10% retainer up front to start the work immediately, and we would pay them monthly. So I know you haven't had a chance to look at this or see this information, but we wanted to present it to you because this is really like I said, a really important milestone for HPO to move forward. Our board, after having several meetings, we've really realized that this is the most important expense that we have next in our projects, in addition to the asbestos and the heat. But this, having part 1 and part 2 completed, allows us to go forward with these historic tax credits, new market tax credits, and keep our project moving. We suspect if we were to receive the historic tax credits, it would actually pay for up to 50% of the renovation project for the building, which is huge. And then we would go after new market tax credits and launch the campaign as well. So I'm not looking for an answer or anything today. We just wanted to present this to you for consideration, and ask you once again, if you would maybe consider allowing us to split this expense with the county commission, who we have not approached yet. We're approaching you first to consider this expense and possibly split it with our county commission. Jane, have I left anything out, or
I don't believe
did
so.
I think?
Just the tax credits would be about $5 million. The total project is about $10 million. Of course, we can play figures by the time we get there, but that gives you an idea of the total cost.
And I do want to say that I think our project is important. You know, I heard you guys talking about the vacant building projects. Of course, we don't want the MAC to be a vacant building. I mean, we have the museum that's in there now, but we want to bring that building more alive. It's certainly, you know, economic development for downtown, which the vibrant downtown and the arts, I believe, is part of your strategic plan. So I think this is a good complement to your strategic plan, but also our downtown community and beyond. It's really a project that we're very passionate about. We've, you know, thank goodness for Jane and all of her volunteer work. We've been at this since 2017, 2018, and we're not giving up. We're excited to see this project through.
Does anyone on council have any questions for Patty or Jane? I'm sure would be willing to. Mayor?
What's the actual ask?
50% of 188
94.
So you're saying,
unless you'd like to give to the whole thing.
We really like to partner with the county on things.
I thought you did. Yes.
just wanting to be sure I know what the ask was.
Yes.
Yeah, so that cost.
I saw that, but then I saw also the furnace or the boiler replacement, yeah. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, we didn't think it was appropriate to ask about support today for the boiler or bring that because we're still seeking estimates and doing our homework on that to figure out what's best for the building.
Oh, we wanted to update you about what's going on and what we need. I mean, these are our most, immediate needs.
So what are your other potential sources of income for that? What other potential, I understand you're asking us and you're asking the county, I was just wondering if you had any other sources for that.
There are some private foundations I think that we could ask, but we have not. We'd prefer to make those requests for other expenses that we know are coming up, like heating and other things like that.
And when do you need these funds?
Probably soon. I mean, as soon as possible, but obviously we know you have to have time to consider it in your budget, but we're trying to move forward with the application on the historical tax credits, and new market tax credits as soon as possible.
We have applied for a SHPO grant in the past, we have applied for a grant from the Preservation Alliance from the state as well. Those all require 50% matches. We were rejected by both of those, but we will apply for those again. That's the next, we are applying for probably 3 grants in the spring that will deal primarily with programming. I think we'll be more ready to do that in the spring. We'll have much more of an idea of programming. Other sources, yeah.
No, you do not have to give me all your sources. I just wanted to have a flavor of kind of what the potential was, just.
I've just developed a draft strategic plan of financing, and I can send that if you'd like to see it. It is a draft. I mean,
Yeah, you don't need to give us anything until it's in final form. You just.
I mean, but those are
I'm
fair
just-
questions.
I'm just asking,
Oh, yeah.
whether we can split that 4 ways with somebody or just how, just, anyway, thank you very much. That's my question.
Any other questions about the historic post office before we move on? No?
If it's okay, I would like to ask you how the most appropriate way to follow up with you, if that is to come back to you after a certain period of time to a city council meeting or work with staff. What do you recommend?
But usually you would work with staff to bring forth a proposal.
Okay.
If staff thinks we can fit it into our budget, for instance. And the most preferred thing for any nonprofit organization is to go through the budget process, because then we're more correctly spending public dollars by comparing different projects to each other all at the same time.
I understand. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's a fair question. If I can ask you what your sources are, you certainly can ask us how to develop something.
That brings us to tonight's public portion. This is an opportunity for the public to address council. You will have 4 minutes. You must address council as a whole. Comments of a personal nature will not be tolerated. You will be asked to leave the microphone. So was there a sign-in sheet? Thank you, Joe. Counselor. The first person on the list is Jane. Did you want to speak during the public portion? Okay.
I thought I was supposed to sign it.
And Vincent, did you wish to? All right.
Here to observe.
He's here to support.
Also, when you come to the microphone, if you would state your name and your address for the public record so that the clerk can adequately make minutes of the meeting. I forgot to mention that. The next person on the list is Andrea Gallagher. Okay. Patrick Kirby.
Was here to support directions.
Katie Schweitzer.
Katie Schweitzer, 3151 View Court, 26508. I don't actually live in the city limits. I'm just here to address the mud thing. We're not constituents of Morgantown, the city of Morgantown, and we really feel uncomfortable with having the city of Morgantown take more control of MUB, considering that more than half of the people that use MUB are not in your constituency. And we kind of like to keep that separated as much as possible. That's really all I wanted to say. I really would love to see MUB be left alone. It seems like city council struggles to work with other organizations, MUB included, and we don't want that to affect us outside of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other attendee wishing to address council? Once, twice? Okay. Brings us to our third item on the agenda this evening, items for discussion. Item A, ordinance amending Article 169, the Utility Board. Manager?
I can certainly give an update as to what the intent of the ordinance will be. One thing that I wanted to clarify is that any changes within the ordinance, proposed ordinance, could occur under the current version of the ordinance. And so basically what the updated ordinance will do is clarify and create clarify expectations as to how things will operate. The ordinance updates the utility board article to provide for better, and if it doesn't provide for better communication, then it certainly has failed, between the board and the city, and to set clear guidelines and expectations on how the city and the board will meet state law requirements for rate setting and project approval. It'll also create a board seat that will be a city council member. It provides for the city manager to be a non-voting ex officio member of the board. And it also specifies the authority that is necessary to acquire real property, and the city council, between the board and the city council, and the option to for the city to open property for public use when it doesn't interfere with the day-to-day operations of the utility. The ordinance also includes the state law requirements that the city council will set utility rates and approve utility projects that are outside the ordinary course of business. That certainly needs to be specified and clarified. It includes definitions then for what council considers projects that are outside the ordinary course of business. That's an overview of what the proposed changes to the utility board article entails.
Thank you for the explanation. Does anyone, well, if Assistant Manager Mozzarella or Attorney Simonton have anything to add, that would be great. If not, we can begin discussion. No? Council have questions, comments, concerns? No? So,
I'm thinking.
Bill? Counselor Kwecky, I'm
Sure.
sorry.
I'll start. I speak for myself. I appreciate what MUB does. I've watched him grow over a period of time. I've been supportive of your activities. I've signed my name to your bonds. I've attended your meetings. I've been to your dedications. I've known a number of your directors, former director anyway. I do believe that what is being presented to us here, the intention is primarily to improve communications, to establish, what roles are appropriate to each agency, and to get the kind of cooperation that I've experienced in other organizations within the city, such as the Parking Authority, for example, which is a very good one. I think that, it's an ordinance, and if it doesn't work, certainly then we need to readdress it. Right now, we have some difficulties that are consistent, and my hope is that this will resolve some of those issues and make our future course much more cohesive and move us in a manner that everybody feels more comfortable with. We just simply need to, I don't see a great deal of changes. I don't see a great deal. We've had to vote on and approve your rates in the past. That's nothing new. Your property is on city property. I mean, your activity on city property, and the majority of that is on city property, not in the outlying districts. I appreciate what you do, and I want to help you continue doing that, and I certainly don't want to run your business. But I do think that this is a move in the right direction.
Thank you, Counselor.
So, I wanted to mention, over the past several years, MUB and the city have worked together on various projects. And one of the projects, like one of the high points, where public dollars were maximized. So ratepayers and city taxpayers got the most out of the project. Were maximized when there was the complete rebuilding of Raleigh Avenue in Evansdale. The work was coordinated so that the MUB infrastructure was laid down first, and then road work followed, unlike sometimes when we don't coordinate and it happens the other way around. So this coordination meant that both MUB and city customers saved tax dollars, and the project turned out beautifully. We just had a neighborhood walk in Evansdale, and people looked at that street and said, wow, that was a great project. And I would like to see, the project was over 5 years ago, and people are still talking about it. The city would like this type of project to become the norm. On other MUB projects, the levels of coordination and communication between MUB and the city have not measured up to the expectations of the public and best practices demonstrated in other communities and regions in West Virginia and beyond. The proposed changes will address this potential of coordination, communication, and accountability by more closely aligning the city with its water utility norms. So in my mind, this is a project, this is a set of improvements to the governing documents, so that we will end up with more opportunities through having a council member serving on the board, similar to our other boards, more opportunities, just what the manager said, but just, we need to see the same kind of cooperation and collaboration that we see with other boards where MUB does what MUB does best, but that we coordinate it so that we can satisfy the needs of MUB ratepayers and city citizens. And for that matter, everyone who's in the water district, and making sure that we maximize and get the most out of each project. So, in that spirit, we're putting this forward. Thank you.
Other council members have comments or questions? No? I'll just say that I hope I was not the only council person who was very caught off guard with the front page of the Dominion Post on Sunday saying, we're going back into White Park, because I, as a member of the Bow Park Executive Committee, was kind of aware that work was about to begin, but I don't feel that council people or Bow Park board members in a city park should have to read about things like that in the newspaper, and I think that most members of both of those bodies did read about that in the newspaper for the first time instead of hearing it from you all, which is very disappointing considering all of the issues that we have had specifically in White Park. So I started getting a lot of questions and comments, and some people are for, some people are against, but I think that I'm finding most of the people who are messaging me saying, how could you do this? Don't realize that, last fall, I already had to vote to approve the MUB rates, and we already have to approve MUB's bonds, and we already technically own the MUB property. So I don't think there's that many changes besides putting a council member on the board, which is something that is perfectly within our right to do. And I do think that it is going to improve communication, because right now it is nearly non-existent. So I'm in favor of moving towards the agenda. And I'm open to hearing, I hope that we will open a line of communication and talk about specific items in the proposed ordinance that maybe some folks have an issue with, or if there's anything that we want to negotiate or reconsider. But as of right now, I am in favor of putting it forward. So the 5 of us here, do we just wish to move this to the next agenda, the future agenda?
Yes.
Next agenda? Okay.
Yes.
Brings us to item B, ordinance amending Article 1718, the Vacant Structure Code.
I had a good conversation with our city engineer this evening about this particular article, and there's still some work being completed to finalize that ordinance, and it's our recommendation that be presented, that we move this forward for consideration at the next city council meeting and placed on that agenda. And by that time, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Symington, by that time we'll have that ordinance up to snuff and ready to go.
Do we want it on that one or the one after?
So before you, this item is your ordinance updating Article 1718, the Vacant Structures Code, which Development Director Mickey Yeager presented about that. And we had planned to also have on your agenda this evening an ordinance updating the city fee schedule. City Council adopted in 2018 a general fee schedule that was intended to collect most fees charged by the city for services such as registration fees under the Vacant Structure Code, or inspection fees, or plan review fees, with the intention of updating that annually, and has since considered the fee schedule once but not changed it. So there have been, in connection with these ordinance revisions to the Vacant Structure Code, some proposed fee changes from the offices doing most of the work on that, the building official and fire marshal, to
to update those. I was not able to integrate those into an ordinance updating your fee schedule for tonight. I apologize for that. But we'd have no problem presenting that to you, for your next meeting if you'd like to use those ordinances for.
So do they need to be moved forward in conjunction with each other?
They don't necessarily have to be, they can be.
Is that better?
They'll do some work together, yeah.
Yeah.
And if we run into any issues with that with staff, we'll certainly review these documents, and if we feel we need more time to make sure everything's wrapped up for council, we certainly can get that to you.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
So we're moving this to the next agenda or a future agenda?
The next appropriate
To the
agenda?
4th, I think.
Either
The
the next
4th,
one or
right?
the one after,
To the 4th.
To the next agenda then.
Thank you.
or a later time if it's not ready.
So everyone in agreement to move these two, well, item B, the ordinance amending Article 1718, the vacant structure code, and item C, ordinance amending the fee schedule, which go together, to the October 4th agenda? All right, sounds great. Is there anything for the good of the council? No comments, no questions? In that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Thank you.
It's much too early.
7:48.
Feel weird. She's gonna get home for bedtime.
Very nice.
Isn't this nice?
Other than that,